welcome back to another edition of the Friday Show brought to you by Monmouth Park. There is a lot going on at Monmouth Park this weekend. Joe, why don't you tell us about it?
We got a big weekend coming up at Monmouth Park. There's four stakes races, all of which are winning your ends for partner races on Haskell Day, which is July 23rd. The TVG.com Pegasus, prep for the TVG.com Haskell. The Grade 3 Monmouth Stakes is a prep that will get you in for the Grade 1 United Nations. The Grade 3 Eatontown will get you in for the Grade 3 Windstar Matchmaker. And finally, the Grade 3 Salvator Mile is a win-in-your-end prep for the Grade 3 Monmouth Cup. 14 races on Saturday, first post at 12:15 p.m.
You know, the Salvatore Mile came up really strong. And what I'm really interested in that race is to see how Hot Rod Charlie comes back off the layoff. Last seen in Dubai, finishing second to Country Grammar in the Dubai World Cup. You know, you look at that horse's past performances. He's a fighter.
Oh, yeah.
He is there at every race.
He's the kind of horse that you can't help but root for because he shows up every time. You know, it's not like he's got, you know, he's by Oxbow, so he's not exactly a top commercial sire. Obviously, he's got the female family on the bottom, but he's, you know, he's kind of a, you know, a not necessarily a rags to riches story, but pretty close to one. Like, he's one that you can really like and feel good and support about. And I believe he won the Vox Populi Award last year. So clearly a lot of people like him. It'll be fun to see how he goes in the sort of second half of 2022.
Fun ownership group with that horse.
Yes.
I'd like to see him maintain a straight course. He's had a little trouble with that, being disqualified from the Haskell last year for weaving and forcing a horse to go down. So Mike Smith takes over on that. You know, that race came up interesting because you got Helium in there, who I think won the Tampa Bay Derby.
Yep,
and
won the Tampa Bay Derby.
I thought was a specialist on synthetics up at Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, won the Tampa Bay Derby, ran surprisingly well in the Kentucky Derby. I feel like he finished 9th or so, which, considering his past performances, considering what he had done, you know, previously leading up to that, I figured he'd be a candidate for last, but he really made me put my foot in it.
And Hall of Famer Roger Atfield has Shirl Spite entered here. This is a turf specialist with a Grade 1 win on turf. I wonder what the thinking is to put this horse on dirt in the Salvatore Mile, maybe to enhance his resume a little bit. Getting a Grade Stakes win on dirt along with his Grade 1 on turf.
Yeah, it could be. You know, North American breeders love to see dirt on that page for a stallion. So if you can get a dirt win to prove that this horse can do whatever you ask him to, I think that might open a few eyes.
And of course, Mind Control is a steady horse that adds some depth. The 4 stakes races, I think they get underway about 4:45, and good fields, good size fields in all 4 races. So it's a good betting card. Don't forget, you can bet on fixed odds on track at Monmouth Park. The odds that you bet are the odds that you're going to get. Joe, let's wrap up the Triple Crown. Who's the leader of the 3-year-old division right now?
Boy, this is wide open, isn't it? Like, there are more answers and questions at this point, when it really seemed like going into the Triple Crown, there was a pretty clear hierarchy of, you know, 2, 3, 4 horses who it seemed like we're going to run off with this. And then Rich Strike goes and blows that up. And now we're not really sure who's good. I mean, we have an idea, but in terms of a clear division leader, like someone you put at the top of the podium, I think there's a case to be made for a wide range of horses. Personally, I'm sticking with the one that brung us here in the first place. I'm staying with Epicenter. Epicenter ran a winning trip in the Kentucky Derby. If Rich Strike hadn't snuck up the rail, he's our Derby winner, and we're having a completely different conversation right now. Had a really tough trip in the Preakness, still ran a very solid second there. He has the kind of resume before the Derby, leading up to that, going into the Triple Crown, that if he comes back and wins one of the big summer races, the Haskell, the Travers, he's right back in the conversation at number 1, and we forget that he was even a question.
So you're betting him on the come, not so much the best horse right now in terms of what he's accomplished, because he doesn't have a Grade 1 win yet, right?
I don't believe he does, but you know what? People love a future wager, and that's where I'm putting my ticket.
Well, it's kind of hard to go against Mo Donegal, who beat the Preakness winner, right, in the Wood Memorial, early voting, and he looked good winning the Belmont. He ran good in the Kentucky Derby, not great. It is wide open, like you said, but one horse that neither of us has mentioned so far, undefeated Jack Christopher, winning the Woody Stevens by a pole. I'm not sure the exact margin, but it was a
pole. Just go with it.
It was a pole. Very impressive.
Yeah, I did an Instagram Q&A the other day, and someone asked me kind of who they thought the best 3-year-old was, and Jack Christopher's got to be in that conversation. The tricky part, though, is in terms of Eclipse Award voting, which we tend to agree is the best 3-year-old of the year, sprinters and milers tend to get ignored in that bracket. Usually it's the horses that ran in the classics, the ones that run in those 2-turn races. So I'm going to be curious to see if that sort of informs Jack Christopher's campaign for the second half of the year, if he starts trying 2-turn races in order to garner some favor with the Eclipse voters who might see 1-turn horse and think, okay, you can win champion sprint or whatever, but champion 3-year-old, that's where the 2-turn horses live.
Well, I think we all know who most of us know who the most impressive winner was on Met Mile Day. Some could argue Jack Christopher, maybe. I think Flightline is the hands-down winner in that category, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. That's every time that I've tried to doubt Flightline, he's made me stick my foot in my mouth. So it's what can you do to doubt him at this point? Someone asked me, do you think he could get 2 turns? At this point, I think that horse could run to one side of the country and back and still win a race at this point. I have no doubts. He's got the breeding. He's a son of Tappet, who we all know can get a 2-turn horse. I don't think there's anything Flightline can't do right now.
So if you own Flightline and you're obviously you obviously had to think about a stallion career, which next race would be the one that does it the most? Would it be the Pacific Classic, which they're talking about, or would you consider the Whitney to be a more important race?
That's a good question. I really think it depends on where the fields shake out. I don't think you can lose either way. I think the real question is where you end up at the end of the season. Do you choose the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or do you choose the Breeders' Cup Classic? I think at this point, if he goes for the Dirt Mile, he just won the Met Mile, so clearly we know he can go there. It doesn't matter who they line up against him. He's a prohibitive favorite. So do you get more points from potential breeders for destroying a field that you should destroy, or reaching up and facing a classic field that might be a little more out of your element, but if you win that, you're the most proven horse in training?
Yeah, I think going from a 1-turn mile to a 1.25 miles, to me, that's a pretty big stretch. I would prefer him to try the Whitney at 1.125 miles. The thing about the Whitney too is, if you're trying to make him as a stallion, every major breeder in the country is there on Whitney Day, I think.
Yes. And
if you turn in an impressive performance on Whitney Day, that's going to resound with them for well into the next year's breeding season. Speaking of which, and we talked about this the other day off camera, but what a group of horses that's going to be going to stud next year.
It's an absolute murderer's row. You think about some of the ones, just think about the winners of the Triple Crown races. They'll be going. We assume that Flightline will, if he doesn't go to stud this year, he's obviously going to stud at some point, and he's going to be very, very well received. You look at a horse like Jackie's Warrior, who is just unstoppable as a sprinter this year. I know Windstar recently, I believe, they announced Nashville. I'm pretty sure going there, he'll be well received. Coolmore has the rights to Jack Christopher. Son of Munnings to follow up the goings there.
Let's not forget about Life is Good. Another one that was sensational last year in the Breeders' Cup. This is a horse that we're going to see some more of him before it's over, I think, too. So it's a good group.
And there's some Overlook Classic winners here too. Mandaloon, your Kentucky Derby winner, he's going to stand somewhere, I assume,
with an asterisk, right?
Yes, exactly. But hey, he gets the trophy. He's got his name up on the Churchill Downs board. He's your Kentucky Derby winner. And one that's kind of flown under the radar, Preakness Stakes winner Rombauer. I don't believe they've announced a landing spot for him yet, but I know that they're looking. So, he's one that's going to kind of carry on the Twirling Candy lineage, and I think he's going to get some attention.
And a horse that has looked very good on track this year, good pedigree, Olympiad, trained by Belmont. If he goes next year to stud, that's another good one. And that's a horse that could have a say in some very big races before the year is out.
Definitely. This could be, and there's a lot to be proven out still. We'll see who actually retires for the 2023 breeding season. But 2023 could be the strongest crop of rookie sires we've had since, the year with like American Pharaoh and Honor Code and, all those. That could be what we're talking about here. This could be the the Jordan Olajuwon draft of stallion prospects that we're looking at here.
Well, on the other hand, this is about horse racing. I'd rather see those horses stay on the track another year. But Flightline is 4. The only reason he's still racing is because he got such a late start. He had 3 races before his 3-year-old year ended. Let's run those guys another year. What do you say?
I support this. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but I support this. Like, this is how you build interest in the sport. Is you keep your stars around and give people an opportunity to see them again and again and again and fall in love with them. Harder to do that when they're in the breeding shed. All
right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. So this Saturday is the big day at Monmouth Park, Haskell Preview Day. Some really good stakes races to at the tail end of the 14 race card, 14 chances.
That's a full day
to get it done. All right. Thanks so much, Joe. Thank you to Monmouth Park for the sponsorship of the Friday show, and we'll see you next week.